So this is the agenda for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the market. The market has shifted yet again. Just strategies that I'm seeing different investors do in today's market. Tied in with those strategies, I actually have some actual on-market deals with a quick snapshot of how those perform. And then, as I mentioned, just kind of overcoming some of those objections. They're all valid objections, and people feel like they hit a roadblock. And the best thing to do is find a solution for that roadblock. It's not an absolute dead stop that you have to come to. There's always creative strategies, and partnership can be one of those to get past anything that you're lacking. So market update. I've noticed the market is picking back up again. We hit like a full stop. I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, just showing stopped, offers stopped. Everything came to a screeching halt. It seems things are moving again now. I wrote an offer last week on a property that had been on the market for 75 days, and we went into multiple offers on it. So I don't think we're going back into that crazy market, but things that have been on for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days are now actually getting some traction. I have some clients that are selling properties, 2 of them, and they've been on the market for a while. We now have an accepted offer on one. The other ones have a huge increase in the number of showings. So it seems things are moving again. That's pretty typical come September. People are back from holidays, back to school, back to a routine, and things are kind of moving along. I am somewhat surprised because interest rates just went up again, and I thought that might slam the brakes on harder, but it seems like people have kind of moved past that and are moving forward anyhow. What I am noticing is a bit of a domino effect where my clients, for example, in Nanaimo, they need to sell their house to buy another house. And so now the offer that they have on their house is subject to the sale of the buyer's house, who is subject to the sale of their house in Nanaimo. So as soon as one goes, we're going to have 4 sales in a row, providing there's not a hiccup somewhere along the way. So there's a lot of buyers that are waiting to buy until they sell. And now that we're getting a couple of buyers, that's releasing a bunch of other buyers to go and buy as well. So a bit of a domino effect happening there. And the media likes to talk about the real estate market and the sales are down, and they give you all these terms, but try to keep in mind that the number of sales is usually what they're talking about. So when they say, oh, sales are down 30% or 40% from this time last year, that's not the price, that's the number of sales. The number of sales can be very deceiving. There was very low, actually, number of sales when the market was extremely hot a year ago. Number of sales was quite low because there was no inventory. There was nothing to move. Stuff would come on the market and was instantly getting snapped up. So number of sales doesn't really affect price. Obviously, if sales are slowing down, dwindling, you start seeing prices having to come down a little bit as sellers try to undercut each other and have to play a little more reasonably. But I've seen slight decreases in prices, nowhere near as much as the decrease as in the number of sales that we've seen. So prices, I don't have the exact statistics. It's hard to get statistics because they usually give you a comparison to a year prior. So you can find out statistics for August 2021, and then they compare it to August 2022. So I know prices are up from a year ago, but it's hard to find a month over month. But I'd say we're down probably 5 to 10% in price, but the number of sales are even lower than that. But things seem to be picking up. So that's just a quick market update. Does anyone have any other insight? Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you say prices down 5 to 10%, over what kind of period? Like since the start of the fall?
Yeah,
I'd start of the down.
Yeah, I'd say the last 3 or 4 months kind of thing. Yeah, it's been a bit of a dip, and I've seen some prices come down pretty drastically, but they were shooting at the stars, right? So it's hard to tell, right?
So a realistic 10% haircut across the board residential.
That's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah. Okay. These are, so the chart here is actually the American, the Federal Reserve, but it's just about interest rates. So, I mean, we have a mortgage broker here that's capable of commenting a little bit. There's been a big decrease in the gap between fixed rate and variable rate mortgages. There was like a 1.5% gap there, and that's tightened up to closer to like a 0.5% or
somewhere. You're seeing a lot of less, like it's prime minus 0.4 now, like where you were getting prime minus 1 even like 2 months ago.
Yeah. So that's tightened. And one thing I definitely noticed at the beginning of the increase in interest rates was as the government or the Bank of Canada was increasing interest rates, mortgage rates increased faster. So if the Bank of Canada increased mortgage or the interest rate by 1%, we were seeing like a 2.5% increase in mortgage rates. Like they were kind of projecting it to go up, so they were aiming pretty high. But now mortgage rates interest rates are creeping up, but mortgage rates aren't actually going up quite as much as the base rate. So I don't know exactly what that means, but it seems like maybe we're kind of flattening off here a little bit. In the States, on September 21st, they raised the interest rate by 0.75% to bring it up to 3.25. We were already at 3.25, so there is, I believe, another one in October where they're going to review and possibly raise it again. So it'll be interesting to see if we kind of leap ahead of the States again, or if we kind of stay fairly close to where they are and wait for them to move. So, but as you can see in the chart there, it's never a gradual line. It's not a smooth, slight increase or decrease. They have kind of knee-jerk reactions, right? When there's a little bit of recession, they just slash interest rates down to nothing. Then they creep it back up until there was a recession, and then they chop it back down again. So it's not, it is what it is. And it's been this way since you could get mortgages. So I don't put too much emphasis on where interest rates are headed. I have been telling people for the last 5 years, buy for cash flow. It doesn't really matter where the market's headed. It doesn't really matter where interest rates are headed, providing that property is going to cash flow if you do need to pay a slightly higher interest rate, especially if you have a variable rate. But other than that, I don't really know what any of this means. I don't know if the interest rates are going to keep climbing and crash the market. I don't know if they're going to flatten off tomorrow. I don't know if there's going to be a recession or another boom. That's why I love real estate. I don't really care. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to hold it for 5 to 10 years, maybe longer. And in that minimum 5-year window, there's going to be likely increase in value. It might crash tomorrow. It might be down in 2 years, but I can almost guarantee that in 5 years and definitely within 10 years, we're going to be higher than we are right now. So it's a waiting game, but it's a relatively safe waiting game as far as I'm concerned. And just for quick math, I always like to know approximately how much your monthly payments will be on a mortgage. So with the interest rate somewhere around 5.25% for a residential mortgage right now, $100,000 costs you about $550 a month. A year ago, that would be, we were like below $400, like $375 a month. So it has obviously increased pretty drastically, but when you're looking at a house and you're figuring you're going to have a $400,000 mortgage on it, that means your payment's going to be about $2,200 a month. So it's just a quick way to do math on that. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about strategies, and I mean, these kind of work in any market, but it's what I'm seeing a lot of people do right now, creative ways to find cash flow in a tighter market. So there's the bread and butter, houses with suites, that is kind of the go-to for most first-time investors. Some people accumulate a large portfolio of those. Some people graduate from those into commercial. We've had a meetup, remember it was last month or the month before, we were talking about student housing, short and medium-term furnished housing, house hacking, which I really try to push everybody towards if they're not doing it already.
Which is?
Having your primary residence generate some form of income, essentially. So living in a suite on your own property kind of thing. So I'll be talking a little bit about all of these in particular. Some stuff isn't selling right now, and there's some sellers that are just saying, oh, well, it's not selling. They're canceling their listing, they're letting it expire. they're moving on. And then there's the people that have to sell, they're motivated. So there's opportunities there, the people that have to move on with it. And I do find that there's more opportunities in houses that need work or problem properties, things that need renovations. Those kind of things are now a little more available at a discounted price. So the primary investor first purchase is usually a house with a suite. Typically, houses with suites generate quite a bit more income than just a ranch or a house without a suite, and that's why typically they make more sense financially. So this is a traditional buy and hold. You're going to buy it, hold it for, again, hopefully at least 5 years, maybe longer. You're going to pay down the mortgage. You have long-term tenants, which is pretty low maintenance. I manage 6 of my own long-term tenants, and it's not a large amount of work. As long as you have good tenants, if you place good tenants in there, it's going to be pretty low stress. You have stable cash flow. Quite often tenants are in there for 2 years, 3 years. They're paying rent every month. It's pretty easy to calculate what your returns are going to be. Hopefully they're not in there forever, because you can't increase rents enough to justify the inflation that we've been seeing, as everybody's aware of. They're fairly easy to finance, just because if you have a rental agreement in place stating how much they're rented for, the bank will take that into consideration when it comes to lending. There's nothing really weird or quirky about them. And typically I'm seeing about a 20 to 25% ROI on those types of properties. And that's calculating like a small 2 to 3% appreciation. The rest is debt pay down or cash flow. So this particular property is a real property, and this is the quick snapshot of the financials of it. So this is in Port Alberni, and it's actually a 3-unit house. And then there's a small, actually a large workshop in the back with alley access that could potentially be rented out for probably a couple $100 a month on its own, either to a tenant in the house or on its own, because it is detached from the house. I believe they're asking $699 right now. I'm thinking it's been on for a while. Probably get it for $675. With 20% down, you're going to be needing about $150,000. Now the net operating income, I figured, was about the gross was about $4,800 a month income. And then obviously your property tax, your expenses, bring the net operating income down to about $3,800 a month. And with a full 80% mortgage on it, you're still seeing about $825 a month in cash flow. So that is a pretty turnkey property that's ready to go, that's generating actually pretty reasonable cash flow, cash on cash of over 7%. And you're going to see, yeah, about a 17% annualized return over like a 10-year projection. So that's a real deal. Everyone's saying there's no such thing as cash flow in the market anymore. That is a cash flowing turnkey opportunity. It's pretty much ready to go as it is. So does anyone have any questions about this one? Yeah.
I can't say it very well. You're saying that you can get $4,800 for that?
Yes.
Including the garage or whatever's that?
Yes.
How many bedrooms are there?
There's 6 in total.
3 suites.
So
Did you hear that
there's
part?
3 units, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 1 on each floor. So yeah, there's 3 kitchens. So the only real issue on this one is a lender is only going to take in the income into consideration from 2 of 3. There's no way they're going to take the income from the 3rd unit into consideration, because it's definitely non-conforming. So that will make it a little bit more difficult to get lending on. But if it can subsidize itself with just the rental income from 2 units, then you shouldn't have a problem getting financing on it. You could essentially say that one person's renting the upper unit, and then one person is renting both of the lower units for a higher price, and try to pitch it that way to the bank. If you want more details, I can send you information on it. I have the full financial breakdown on that one.
Sexy.
That's not bad for a turnkey, ready to go property.
And you are stoked with the rentals in Port Alberni still, like?
Yeah.
Finding tenants is good?
Yeah, I've got 10 units there now, and I've had no problem placing tenants, and I have good
Great.
tenants in my units. So yeah, I have no problems with Port Alberni. It's not necessarily where I want to live, but the numbers work as far as investments go.
Could you do a non-conforming garage into a suite?
You could, there's no water or anything in that garage, so it would be a lot of work, and you'd probably raise flags, running plumbing and everything. Municipalities might be smart to it pretty quick. Yeah, and my concern about investing a lot of capital into non-conforming things is if it gets caught and you can no longer run it, you're gonna lose the income from it, and you're gonna basically have lost the renovation cost of converting that unit, because now it's gonna just sit a pretty garage at that point, right? We've talked about student housing before. So what you're gonna be looking for on this is high bedroom count. But you don't want a lot of bedrooms and not a lot of bathrooms. I wouldn't go anything more than 2 to 1. So if you have a 4-bedroom house, you're going to need 2 bathrooms. Anything less than that, you're going to have a lot of students fighting over bathroom space. But realistically, you could have a large house, you only really need 1 kitchen. The closer to the university, obviously, the better. Now, it is going to be higher turnover and more management. You're going to be babysitting 5 or 6 or 7 students. So there is more work involved in that, but there's a premium to be made there. Lending can be tricky on it, because if you have a 7-bedroom house and you're renting it for $1,000 a bedroom and it's bringing in $7,000 a month rent, the bank is not going to consider that as income. They are going to take it as if you were to rent that long term to like a normal residential tenancy, and it could only bring in $4,500 a month. That's the income that they're going to consider when they're looking at lending on this. They're not going to consider short-term housing, student housing, anything like that. And I actually recommend strongly not telling them that it's student housing or short-term housing, because they don't have the appetite for that. Typically in Nanaimo, it's a relatively decent unit, something nice. They're renting for $1,000 to $1,200 a bedroom. If they have like their own ensuite bathroom, they can even be higher than that. But you are expected, obviously, to cover cable, internet, heat, all the utilities. Everything needs to be inclusive at that price, and sometimes even furnishing it. Yeah.
Do you think that these are at a point yet that you could put them on like Airbnb and then have like a management company, like Jetstream or something like that, like manage them?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a lot of work otherwise. Like,
It is a lot of work, and we had Tana Selko from Remax Property Management come and do a presentation, and she actually does short-term property management. She's the only property manager I know that will actually manage non-residential tenancies. So yeah, there is opportunities like that, and that's the thing. It can be lucrative, but it's a lot more work. If you can get someone else to do all the extra work, then it's fine, right? But yeah, it's a lot to take on. Yeah.
You said like in Nanaimo, you can get 1,000 to 1,200 per bedroom?
Yeah, it's quite high.
I've been like 2 or 3 times in the last year, and every time I looked, most of the rooms are 1,000 or less, like between like 650 and 1,000.
Yeah, I know somebody that has a small bachelor suite on 5th, fairly close to the university, and I believe he's doing $2,800 a month for the one. Yeah, it's just a bachelor suite.
Is that just not very good?
Yeah, well, there's still a lot of landlords that don't know what the current rate is, right? But there's a huge shortage right now of student housing. So unfortunately, you can kind of charge what you want, and it's not necessarily ideal. I did run the numbers on this on the next slide here. I believe I ran it at $800 or $900 a bedroom, so a little bit lower, right? But it also kind of depends on the condition. If it's a relatively modern house and it's well kept and fairly well furnished, you obviously get a lot more than something that's run down.
But this one's got a weird thing with like guy's got a master lease on it. And
yeah, it's sort of weird, but it's also sort of brilliant because yeah. So this house I believe is like 4,500 square feet. It's massive, 8 bedrooms. And there's a caretaker that lives in the property, and he lives in the basement suite, and he manages all the students. And so he essentially leases the entire house from the landlord for a fixed price, which is good because you can take that one lease to the bank and say, look, at this person's paying this much per month for the entire house. And that's probably a little bit more lendable than saying, hey, look, I've got 7 different students renting it. Here's 7 different leases. They're not going to have any interest in that. So, yeah, there is a caretaker essentially on site on this one. He would like to stay, he is kind of assumable, and he's willing to work hard and kind of negotiate terms for new people moving in, and in return, he gets basically a cut on his rent, he gets a discount on his rent, right? So yeah, there's opportunity there. This is the financial breakdown. Yeah, I believe they're at 750 now. Yeah, I estimated fairly low. I think again $800 or $900 a month for the units, and I only put 6. It's an 8-bedroom house. I only put actually 6 of the units being rented, just because 8 seems like a little too many to put in there. And you're still seeing about $900 a month cash flow out of that. Yeah, so again, another opportunity. I did calculate in this equation that your insurance, instead of typical $2,000 a year for insurance that I put on houses, I put $4,000 for the insurance on it, just because you tell any insurance company that you're running a student housing or short-term housing, your insurance is going to be a lot more.
A lot of insurance, more than.
Yeah, it's.
So you're just saying like 3 unrelated people in a house is like.
Yeah, it kind of falls into like rooming house category at that point. But yeah, you have to hunt around. It is available because I know there's rooming houses out there that have insurance. But yeah, you're right. A lot of them, they want the bread and butter, the easy cookie cutter residential houses. They don't want any of this stuff. You have to kind of go to that kind of off market, or not off market, but the niche market stuff to find insurance companies for this kind of stuff.
Curious, the concept of the on-site caretaker leasing.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the way that they were avoiding giving leases out to tenants because it's always a sublet at that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an added benefit as well. And one of the things that we discussed when we were talking about short-term rentals at a previous meetup was, yeah, what triggers residential tenancy, right? And the consensus was where your mailing address is. So if you don't allow people to have their mailing address at the student housing, if they have their mail going to their parents' house or wherever they were previously living, then technically that's their primary residence, and this is just where they're staying while they go to university. So having a kind of a master lease and subleasing kind of almost reinforces that this is you're renting rooms. It's more of a hotel than it is or a residential thing. And yeah, there's benefits obviously, but not falling under the Residential Tenancy Act. You don't have to abide by all of those rules and restrictions. So yeah, that's another kind of benefit to doing
shared kitchen is another one. Like these guys have been coming and going, and you know, I had a conversation with them. We see it. It's like the intention into which the lease agreement was entered.
Yes.
And so I don't know how it would work, but we sometimes tell our clients to not tell us if they've leased it to, like, say, their operating company or something.
Yeah.
As a way to do it. So they're essentially leasing it to themselves and then charging it back to themselves and some of those things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, never tell your insurance company or your mortgage broker any more than you need to. I have had clients share their building inspection, their house inspection with the insurance company, and then we had to go get another insurance company because they can't unsee it, right? So don't provide them anything. And if they're any good at being a mortgage broker or insurance broker, they won't ask because they don't honestly want to know. They don't want to kill the deal. So yeah, and yeah, leasing to your own company is another creative solution. And there's a lot of opportunity there, even if it's not your property. So for example, I have a house in Prince George and up down with a house with a suite, and both units came available at the same time. And my friend was running his rentals to like work crews up there, like furnished units. So he just came to me and said, hey, can I rent your house at the price that you were getting for rent? And I'm going to furnish it and I'm going to rent it to work crews and I'm going to pocket the difference in the money. So I had a long-term tenant that was managing it and taking care of the whole property for me. And he was making some money on a property that wasn't even his, and I had a very stable tenant at that point. So there's lots of opportunities out there for creative strategies, and yeah, that can also help satisfy lenders as well. Any other questions about this one? So another strategy is short-term and medium-term, so it's similar to student housing, but not necessarily to students. You have to be careful with the municipality. Nanaimo, for example, doesn't really allow short-term rentals in residential properties. So what a lot of people are now doing is medium-term. So they're minimum 30-day leases, but they're usually fully furnished and they're charging a premium. So this can be for, executives that are spending some time in the area. They come here once or twice a month for 3 or 4 days at a time, and they don't want to book a hotel every time they come, but they need to for business, and they just want a place secure for themselves, fully furnished. They show up, spend a couple of nights, do their business, go home. Companies, again, work crews and stuff like that. That's a big thing in Prince George, but I've heard it's actually very common here as well. You'll have TELUS or Shaw will just rent the thing from you because they always have employees that are coming and going out of the area, and their employees stay there. So again, you've got a nice stable lease. Sometimes it's occupied, sometimes it's not, but you're getting that constant monthly income. And again, you can charge a premium because the companies want that flexibility of not signing a 1-year lease, being able to come and go as they please. A lot of landlords wouldn't allow that in their rentals. So you're hitting a bit of a niche and can charge a premium for that. Out of town workers, a lot of people that, if you're near the university, you have people, nurses doing their residencies at the hospital and stuff like that. They have 4 months or 6 months. They don't want to sign a 1-year lease. They don't want to move from wherever it is that they're currently living and bring all of their furniture. They just want to stay there for a few months and then move on. Long holidays. If you're coming from Europe or wherever, Australia, and you're coming for 3 months or 4 months, it's pretty crazy to stay in a hotel. So maybe you just want to rent it for 3 or 4 months. Obviously, this is similar to student housing. You have higher turnover. You're responsible for the furniture, so you're going to have some wear and tear, and have to keep that clean and updated. And I'd also focus on picking who it is that you're trying to target, who you're trying to get for this rental unit, and catering it that way. So if you say, hey, I want people that are on holidays from overseas, well, then theme it very West Coast, have a lot of, West Coast art and a West Coast feel to it, so that they get to embrace that. If you're targeting executives, you're going to need to go high end. You're going to need high end furnishings and beddings, and everything needs to be a little bit fancier because that's what they're going to expect, right? So catering it specifically to who you want will hopefully keep you have tenants in there as frequently as possible. And hopefully you can collect a premium because you're targeting specifically towards people that want exactly what it is that you're offering. Any questions about the short term? So this is an actual condo on Dufferin, which is super, super close to the university. $325,000. I forget what I put for rent on it. Maybe $2,700 a month in rent. Again, this is going to be fully furnished, including cable, internet. Your operating expenses have included, obviously, your strata fees, cable, internet, utilities. Obviously, all of that's going to be on the landlords. I've already taken that into consideration. So you're almost $1,900 a month for your operating income. Deduct your mortgage, and you should see about $500 a month cash flow out of it.
And that building's allowing it?
It's unrestricted. So they allow rentals as long as it's minimum 30 days. So they wouldn't allow short-term rentals, but I don't think that they can say anything as long as you're meeting that minimum 30-day requirement. So yeah, it should be legit. You might get people that are complaining about it. I don't know if they can do anything about it. Any questions about?
Have you seen, how are they doing enforcement on some of these things? I basically tell my clients that they should always count on their properties to cash flow as long-term rentals. Right?
Yeah.
Like outside of them, I know they have like a year meeting with Airbnb and are checking what's available.
Right.
But I mean, that's their only thing, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't think their enforcement can be that strong. I mean.
No, I think you're right. I don't think they can spend that much time digging into it. But yeah, you're right about it needing to work as a long-term rental as well, or at least be at a break even, or accept the fact that you might be subsidizing at $200 a month to keep it afloat, and you're okay with that. Because I have seen people buy places, convert them into Airbnbs, and then COVID hit and it got shut down and they had quite a few units, and now they're paying monthly to cover all of the mortgages because they're vacant. Luckily, Airbnb picked back up again quite quickly and everything got back on track. But if you have to convert your unit to a residential, long-term residential unit, does it still make sense? Will it still cash flow, or at least be revenue neutral? Because you don't want to get stuck holding something that's a financial burden on you every month. Now you're trying to unload it, and possibly the market is not in a good state at that point in time, and you're selling at a loss. So always have a plan B, essentially, is what it comes down to. If that's a long-term rental, then that works. This condo wouldn't work for a long-term rental. It only works as a premium for that short-term rental, whereas the previous ones, obviously the first one we looked at with 3 units, that was based on long-term rentals, it would be fine. The student housing one, I think you'd actually probably be fine at the purchase price. I think it was around $750. It's still a 4,500 square foot, 8-bedroom, 4-bathroom house. You're still going to get a premium even as long-term rentals. I don't know how many houses are available for rent that have that many bedrooms. It's just not a common thing. So I think you have a pretty easy time placing tenants at kind of a premium in there. But yeah, you're right. Protect yourself. Have a plan B. Now, house hacking is just the concept of generating income from your primary residence in some way. So this obviously reduces your cost of living. Because if your mortgage is being subsidized by someone else, that frees up a lot of money. I'm a huge fan of this. I'm still doing it to this day. My primary residence is a 5-acre parcel with 2 houses on it. And everyone goes, oh, wow, what a beautiful property. I don't know how you can afford this. It's like, I can't afford it. The tenants are paying me $2,900 a month in rent. That is actually covering all of the mortgage at this point. That is a very easy lifestyle to maintain when someone else is paying your mortgage for you. So a house hack can be, you buy a house with a basement suite, you either live upstairs or you live in the basement suite. You could have an Airbnb. You could buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo and rent out the other bedroom to just a rooming situation. If there's some sort of large workshop on the property, you could rent out the workshop. I know somebody that put a bathroom in the workshop and lived in the workshop and rented out his house. There's lots of options out there, and there's lots of benefits because it's a big boost of income that's basically subsidizing your cost of living. So when you go to the bank, you now have, essentially your cost of living has been reduced, your overhead has been reduced drastically, which creates more borrowing power for you. And you should be able to put a lot more money in the bank every month because obviously you have this income coming in from the additional accommodations. And the more money you can be putting in the bank, the sooner you can save up the down payment and buy the next house. So my first house had a suite. My second house has a second house. I will always find a way to house hack it. It's just a great way to have a better lifestyle at no real additional cost. And I understand some people say, well, I could never live with a roommate, or I don't want someone else living in my house. And that's up to you. That's a sacrifice that you have to make. I know people that said, under no circumstances am I going to have a tenant, living in the basement of my house. And so he couldn't afford to live in Parksville, so he moved to the East Coast. I would rather have someone in my basement suite here than live on the East Coast. So to each their own. But yeah, lots of opportunities. Again, allows you to afford more. And you could use this in conjunction with a partnership. And you're bringing a lot of value if you're going to live in the primary residence for 2 reasons. 1, you can be the on-site manager. And 2, if it's a primary residence, you can get away with putting 5% down. Now, as a capital partner or as an investor, if I can buy a house with 5% down instead of 20% down, my return on investment skyrockets. It will hurt cash flow because obviously you need to come up with, or the mortgage is going to cover an extra 15% of the purchase price. So that's going to mean bigger mortgage payments, less cash flow, but your ROI is gonna go up drastically because you're getting like 5% down. And sometimes it's pretty marginal, but if you are putting less than 20% down, so you have an insured mortgage, they'll actually offer you a slightly lower interest rate because it's an insured mortgage. The bank's not really at risk. So it's a small amount, but it's something, right?
Question on that.
Yep.
Is there any reason why you can't, so like with my house in Lake Cowichan, I'm done renovating, adding suites, it's my primary residence. Can I buy something else and move to it and call it my primary, renovate that, put 5% down on that one and keep doing that and avoid putting 20% down?
Yes.
Totally, no.
Yes, but you have to have at least 20% equity in the property that you're leaving.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the loophole. But yeah, I know somebody, and I've been told that you can't, and some lenders say, no, you can't, but I know somebody that did this exact thing in Prince George. He bought a house, put a basement suite in, and then the basement suite pushed up the value enough that it was beyond 20%. Used 5% down, bought the next house, moved into that, put in a basement. So we did that 4 times. We bought 4 houses with 5% down, just moved out of each one as he pushed the equity up. So
you need 20% equity in the house, or you need, what do you need?
you need 20% equity in the house that you're moving out of, essentially, right? Yeah, and then you should be okay.
People often get this confused with first-time home buyer. Like
Right.
they always think that 5% gets used once.
Right,
And that's my
right.
first-time home buyer. That's just the property transfer tax.
Right,
So.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's another advantage of house hacking is it gets you away with 5% down. And if you can do some renovations where the market naturally appreciates the property enough that you can go on to the next one that needs 5% down, there's a big advantage there. This particular property is still for sale. And there's 4 houses on it. This is up in Harrington. They're asking $1 million. All the houses are exactly the same. They were all built in the early 90s. They're 2-bed, 1-bath houses. They're fairly spacious, big living room, decent kitchen, relatively well built, but simple houses. So if someone were to buy this property, move into one of the houses, that leaves you with 3 units left. And I think I calculated somewhere around $2,200 or $2,400 a month rental income from each of the additional 3 houses. You are going to be in a negative cash flow of about $430 a month if you're living in one of the houses. If you rented out all 4 houses, you'd be actually in positive cash flow. But you're going to be in a negative because you're only putting 5% down, which increases your mortgage payments, and obviously you don't have the rental income from one of the houses. But you're living in a 2-bed, 1-bath house, and this property is actually a 3.4 acre parcel of land. So they're nice, big, private houses. You'd be living there for $400 a month. And I know everyone says, oh, rent's unaffordable. They're right, but buying houses is super cheap. $430 a month, you can live in a house. So I think that's a major value. Now, if you don't have the 5% down, who does? Who would be interested in partnering, providing that 5% down? You're managing the properties and you're maybe paying some rent just to make sure that it's not a negative cash flowing property. So you pay $1,000 a month so that the investor gets $500 a month in his pocket. And now you're building equity in $1 million property and collecting rent and paying down a mortgage. So this is a great scenario where you could house hack and partner if you didn't have that down payment. And the down payment would only be $50,000 plus your closing costs. You're talking $70,000 to close on $1 million property. Most investors are going to jump at an opportunity like that, right? That being said, this is an ideal property, but it's going to be non-conforming, which means it's going to be almost impossible to get insurance that will replace all 4 houses if they burn down, which means lenders are going to have a really hard time giving you a mortgage on it. So on paper it works, but unless you've got a super creative mortgage broker or whether you have a super creative insurance agent, it's going to be a little bit tricky that way.
Plus the houses are probably all rented out for cheap.
They are, not horribly cheap, but yeah, they are currently rented out for below market value. I think they're somewhere ranging between like 16 and 18. So it's not terrible, but yeah, they are a bit of it. Another one that you could get away with 5% down on, and house hack is the one that we looked at already, the student housing unit. So if you just took away instead of renting out 6 rooms, you just rented out 5 rooms. And on the next slide, I have a floor plan that kind of shows how you could set it up. You're gonna be out about $700 a month out of your own pocket, but you'd be living in a self-contained 2-bedroom suite in the basement, and again, paying off a large mortgage. It might be hard to see, but these are the floor plans. So the top floor, you have 5 bedrooms. On the main floor, you have your kitchen, a living room, an additional bathroom, your laundry, and a den. And what is here looks like 1 or possibly 2 other bedrooms. And then on the lower floor, you have like a rec room and a den that's part of the upper units, and then a self-contained 2-bedroom, 1-bath suite with laundry. So if you put 5% down, live in the 2-bedroom basement suite, which, you know, if you were to rent that, you'd probably be at $1,800 a month rent. Or for $700 a month, you could own the whole building. So yeah, house hacking is a really good way for people to get into the market if they don't have a lot of capital, especially if you can do a partnership. Any questions on that one? All right. So targeting houses that aren't selling, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that isn't selling. And again, sometimes they're just letting the listings expire and don't really care. Other times they're doing some pretty drastic price drops. So this has been on for 75 days and they've done 2 $50,000 reductions. So they started at $850 and they're down to $750. This is a 2013 house. And it's a 5-bed, 3 up, 2 down, and it's a legal suite in the basement. I'm not necessarily saying that that's, you know, the ideal best investment out there, but to pick up a 10-year-old house that's still technically under warranty for $750,000 wasn't really a thing 6 months ago. So that is definitely a decent value there. You can watch motivated sellers drop their prices, and that's when you might want to come in with a lower offer. There's no harm in trying, as long as they're motivated. The other thing is, when the market was hot, people will buy anything. They'll overlook anything. If the house needs work, if it's got a failing septic system, if it has tenants that aren't paying enough rent, if it needs the driveway repaved, it's in a sketchy neighborhood, the fence is falling down, it needs all new windows, whatever it is, people didn't care. They just needed to get their hands on something, and they were bidding on stuff, unconditional, just out of desperation. That changes when the market softens and it goes back to more of a buyer's market, because buyers can pick and choose. They have time. They have time to shop around. There's a plethora of houses to choose from. They buy the ones that are the best value, the best deal. And those are the houses that are turnkey, that are nice, that have the curb appeal, that wow factor. They snap those up, and what's left is the houses that do need the renovations, they do need the work. So we're getting back to a market where the BRRRR strategy, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, and flips can come back into play, because you can say, hey, look, you're desperate to sell your property. This thing's not selling because it needs a major renovation. We're going to come in and offer substantially under market value. You do the work, place some tenants in there, or sell it. Again, flips, I've never done a flip. And I don't have any intention of doing a flip, because I don't know where the market's headed. You could buy something that seems like a $100,000 discount today, and 6 months from now, by the time you're done doing the work, the market's dropped 100,000, and all you're going to do is all that work for free. So flips are very dependent on the market, and lots of people over the last 2 years, oh, I made $150,000 flipping this house. No, you didn't. You bought and you held for 6 months, and then you sold it for $150,000 profit. Some of that might have been due to the work that you did, but a large percentage of it was just due to the appreciation in the market. So flips are always a little bit sketchy, and we're going into a very uncertain market. I'm skeptical, and it's not my cup of tea, but there are people out there, that's their experience, they're comfortable, they can get it for the right price. And worst case scenario, your exit strategy could be placing tenants. So if you plan to sell it for $100,000 profit, and it turns out that no, you're just at a break even, and you can stick tenants in it for 2 or 3 years until the market comes back up, and look what you did that time. that can work, but again, only certain properties lend themselves to working good as a rental property. Yeah, any questions on stuff that's not selling or market deals is another one, things that are going after expired or canceled listings, just contacting them and just being like, look, you're really motivated to sell, are you willing to work out a deal? Yeah, you gotta be really trying to the real estate agents do that though. Yeah, so kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about was what we talked about at the beginning, just objections to why you're not necessarily moving forward to get that next property, right? And these are the problems we talked about. You don't have the money, you don't have the borrowing power, there's no deals, you don't have any partners, lack of education, fear, don't really know exactly what you're doing. You think the sky is falling. So in the end, what it really comes down to is whether or not you're willing to do what it takes to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So all of those problems are solvable. No money, again, if you find a deal, or if you want to do a house hack and you were going to live in the property, you might be able to find the 5% down fairly easily. Borrowing power, again, this comes from partnerships. If you found an ideal opportunity to buy a property, there's probably somebody out there that would have borrowing power to make that happen. No deals. We just went over a number of cash flowing on market deals that exist right now, so that's not a valid excuse. No partners. Luckily, everyone that's here is working on that right now because there's a bunch of people in this room that have money, have borrowing power, know about deals, have creative strategies, and that's what these things are all about. Not knowing what you're doing, again, you're here, you're learning, you're working on that already. The sky is not falling. We talked about this in a previous meeting. Recessions are so short-lived. Typically, basically everyone that I've looked up in the last 50 years has been less than 18 months. Most of them are actually less than a year. It doesn't really matter. I'm not saying be in a panic to buy now. I'm just saying find an opportunity that matches your criteria and buy it. If you don't find something that matches your criteria, then maybe hold off. But don't stop yourself from buying an investment right now because you're not sure where the market's headed. There's lots of people that have done that have missed out on great opportunities and they kick themselves down the road. I don't know anyone who's bought a piece of property and 10 years later regretted it. I just don't think that's a common occurrence unless maybe it's bought in Detroit. But even then, that's coming back. So I'm a big fan of the saying, if knowledge was the key, we'd all be rock stars with six-pack abs. And we all know exactly what it takes to get six-pack abs. You just do a whole lot of sit-ups all the time. And yet not everyone has six-pack abs. It's not because they don't know what they're doing. It's because they're not willing to do what it takes to accomplish it. And that, if you can just admit that to yourself, that's fine. If you're not willing to do the work to accomplish the goal, then that's fine. Just to come to that acceptance, but realize that it's not one of the other problems on here. It's just you choosing to not go through the actions required to make that thing happen, right? So you can have results or you can have excuses, not both. That kind of sums it up fairly well as well. It's a fair amount of commitment to own real estate. You have to overcome a lot of fear. You have to do a lot of education. You need to come up with money. You have to be disciplined to try to save up your down payment or prevent yourself from buying that new car, which hurts your qualifications for a mortgage. It's a goal that you have to always work towards. And if you're not willing to do that work, that's fine. And everyone gets to a certain level, and I'm probably at very close to where I'm going to be for my portfolio. I have about 20 units now. They cash flow fairly well. I'm doing some major renovations on the most recent purchases, and that's it. I'm kind of happy there. There's people that I know that have hundreds of units, huge portfolios, and that's great. And I could do that, but I don't want to do the work. I'm not going to make excuses and say, oh, I didn't get the deals that he got. Oh, I don't have the connections that he's got. Oh, I didn't get the lending. I didn't buy at the right time. Can't find the right partner. Whatever the excuse is, has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with I'm not willing to commit to the effort it would take to build a portfolio to 100 or 200 or 500 units. I don't want the stress. I don't want the burden of having to spend that much time doing it. So just accept where you're at and just realize that your life is perfectly engineered for the results you're getting. You are where you are because of the effort you put forward, and you'll be where you will be in the future based on the efforts that you continue to put forward. All of these are just excuses, essentially. I'm not criticizing anyone for making excuses. It's just know that the excuses are your way of telling you that you're just not willing to put in the effort to make that particular thing happen. So does that make sense to everybody? Sort of, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's well spoken.
All right, thanks, good.
Yeah, I say the same thing about people that are like, oh, I want to buy my first house and blah, 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 and they have all these intentions, they're like, as long as it's in James Bay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's exactly it.
It's like, yeah.
You gotta have realistic expectations, and you need to realize that this is the amount of work that it's gonna take to achieve this goal. And there is no shortcut. People keep looking for a solution of it, it's gonna land in their lap, or it's just not.
Yeah, you're so lucky.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Oh, you're lucky you bought it at the right time. No, I just bought, is what it came down to. And maybe the time is where it comes down, right? Another saying like this, no one can do your push-ups for you. If you want to be in shape, you can't send somebody to the gym for you. It's you. You have to do the work required to achieve your goals. And you can make as many excuses as you want, but that's just you accepting that you're not willing to put in that effort. And there's lots of things I'm not willing to put in the effort for. I don't have six-pack abs. I know exactly what it takes to make it happen. I'm just not interested in doing a bunch of push-ups and sit-ups every day. So just be realistic and let yourself off the hook. Say, you know what? I am content sitting on the couch and eating Doritos in my one-bed basement suite until I'm 65, and that's all I want in life. Perfect. Just be happy with that and accept that that's what it's going to be. If you're not happy with that, if you want to build a retirement portfolio, if you want to invest in real estate and hopefully generate enough income that it can prevent you from having to go to a job that you hate, then you're going to have to take steps. And if you aren't taking those steps, then you don't really want it. So I think that's about all I got. I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
Good shed.
Oh, we got some chats on there. All right, let's see what we got. What's the prediction on prices next year for rental properties on the island? I have no idea. If I knew that, I would either buy a bunch more or not buy any at all and sell everything I have. I mean, I couldn't have predicted that a pandemic would cause property prices on the island to skyrocket. I don't know where interest rates are headed. I don't know. It's hard to predict a lot of things. One thing I do know is Canada has the lowest housing per capita of any G7 country. We are so short on housing that they would have to ramp up production or construction of new units so substantially to get caught up to where we need to be. It's going to take decades if they ramp up production today, but they're not. There's a lot of developers actually cutting back right now because of the interest rates. So the demand will remain on Vancouver Island. I think if there's a bit of a recession, it's going to be in less desirable areas, in the same way that when there's a recession, less desirable properties start selling for cheaper. But Vancouver Island is desirable. Everybody wants to be here. It's just some people can't afford it. So we might see a correction in price, but I would foresee if there is a substantial recession, we're a lot less affected by it on the island than New Brunswick or, I don't know, Saskatoon, somewhere where people don't really want to be. No offense to anybody in Saskatoon. How can I check the credit score of a potential tenant? Good question. Are you allowed to do that?
So you can ask permission.
Right, yeah, you can ask permission.
They don't have to give it to you.
Right, yeah.
And then you don't have to go into it.
Yeah,
You
true.
can also check their like court history.
That's right, yeah,
driving
yeah.
history.
You can't do a criminal record check, but you can check that they've been to court for certain things. So yeah, there's.
Single Key is another provider that does like a whole thing. It puts together like a whole you know, kind of like a resume for renters. I was looking at it recently because we've had some vacancies. And you can just give them a link and they pay for it. It's like $30 or something. And
Okay.
it does the whole thing and then you
Oh.
just send it to me when it's done.
Oh,
Your cake.
that's easy. I like automated and easy.
Yeah, so I haven't used it, but I've heard really good things and it's Canadian, so it's
What was the name of it?
single,
Single key.
single key.
Okay, just give you